All right, we're recording. So in this video, we're going to be talking about how Bitcoin solves forever wars and about Gaza in the blockchain, because there's a reference to Gaza in the blockchain. Now, I haven't posted on this channel for a few years, but I just got this new camera and this new microphone. So we're going to be back at making some YouTube content here. So let's get into it. Well, let's start off with Gaza in the blockchain. How is Gaza in the blockchain? So Gaza is actually referenced in the first block ever mined, in the first transaction. Is this reference on purpose or is it just by chance? We're going to discuss this. But just let's get into it and let's take a look at that transaction. So when I say let's take a look at that transaction, I have a copy of the blockchain on my computer. So we're going to look into it. So I'm running Bitcoin Core, which is just a client that you can use to get a copy of the full Bitcoin blockchain on your computer. You can do that if you want as well. So if I go in my C drive and I look at this folder here, Bitcoin node, all transactions that ever happened with Bitcoin are in this folder. And this is why if I right click and I go on properties, you're going to see that this folder is 633 gigabytes large because the whole blockchain is in this folder. And every 10 minutes, when a new block gets added to the blockchain, each block is about 4 megabytes, you're going to see this folder grow by 4 megabytes. So I guess we're learning a few things here as we're discussing the subject about Bitcoin, which is a little bit the purpose of this video. This is how Bitcoin works. You know, a lot of people get confused, like, where is Bitcoin? Where's the blockchain? Well, the blockchain is here. It's on my computer, and it's on the computer of thousands of other people. That's why it's called a distributed ledger. It's decentralized. Unlike your bank that has a copy of your transactions, unlike Netflix that has a copy of all the movies on their servers, Bitcoin, the copy of the blockchain, of the data, of this information, a lot of people have it. Anybody can have it. You can have it. So, you know, your bank might have your data on their servers. And when we say servers, it's just computers. A server is just a computer that's up 24/7, that has a lot of storage space, that has a good connection, but it's just a computer. And your bank might have redundant data. They might have it in a few different locations. But nobody has data that's as redundant and as persistent as Bitcoin. You know, I'm not the only one who has the full copy of the blockchain. A bunch of people do. You know, if you go on Google and you write Bitcoin nodes, because what I'm running is a Bitcoin node, you'll see that there's over 50,000 people who have a Bitcoin node running. So when you think about it, Bitcoin is the most persistent database ever. If we have a natural disaster, if we have a nuclear war, if there's only one database that's going to survive, it's most likely going to be the Bitcoin database. Some people have it in bunkers. Some people have it in so many different locations. It's the most persistent database. It's decentralized. And this is what a Bitcoin node is. It's people who have a full copy of the blockchain. When miners propose a new block that has transactions, we get it. We make sure it follows protocol. If it does, we add it to the blockchain and we update the blockchain. So we're going to take a look at it here. So I'm going to go into my Bitcoin node folder, and in blocks, we're going to take a look at this the first block in this first file. So I'm actually going to open a PowerShell. Here we go. And we're going to navigate to here. So I'm going to go current directory, and I'm going to go into the C drive, and I'm going to go, actually, let me list everything. Okay, so I'm going to go current directory, C drive, Bitcoin node blocks. So we're going to go to that directory. Bitcoin node blocks. Okay, so I'm in this directory. Now what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to open and look at the first item in this block. So I'm going to write type, and I'm going to go total count 1. I'm going to first have the look. Oops. I'm going to take a look at the first item here. I forgot to specify that I want to look at the block, the first block. Okay, now you can see here that it's gibberish. because this is a computer language. I can actually just format this. Format X. It's just going to be a little bit more human readable. So you can take a look here at the first item here. This is the transaction data. And in this transaction data, there's something called the Coinbase. Coinbase is basically, you can write something when you send a transaction. And here there's something that was written in the Coinbase. It's called the Times 03 January 2009. So this is a reference to a news article that was in the Times. And the reference is the Chancellor on the brink of second bailouts for banks. This is what we're going to look at, and this is where the reference about Gaza is. Now, if you wanted to look at the blockchain, you don't need to run your own nodes. You can use a block explorer. For example, you can go on mempool. So mempool here is a block explorer. It's somebody who has a node. I think this is from Blockstream. It is from Blockstream. They have their node and they're connecting it to a user interface where you can go and you can look at different blocks and different transactions. And if you don't want to, run your own nodes. So we can actually look at this instead of looking at it here. I just wanted to show you on my own computer because to show you that you can just have the blockchain yourself and look at anything on the blockchain yourself. But if you don't want to, you can use a block explorer. And we're going to go here and we're going to take a look at the first block. Or let me go to the fifth block. Here, I'm going on the fifth block. Actually, let me go to the third block. Sorry, let's go to the second block. All right. And you see block 0 is in the gold color because this is the Genesis block. It's the first block that was ever created. And in the Genesis block, if you click on it, which is the block we just looked at, if you take a look at the Coinbase here, you're going to see what I'm talking about. The Times 03 January 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. This transaction was sent by Satoshi, and he added this text. In the same way, when you send a transaction with your bank, a wire transfer, you can add text in a memo. You can do that with Bitcoin. Here, you can see it on the Block Explorer, or you can download the blockchain yourself and look at it yourself. So what is this reference? What was Satoshi talking about? So this reference here was to a, let me actually just Google it, to this news article here. Okay, it's to this news article. And in this news article, Chancellor on the brink of second bailouts for banks. So this is after the 2008 financial crisis, where the government bailed out banks. And when government bails out banks, they're printing money, devaluating money from the people to give to banks, where the objective of central banking initially was to make sure that banks followed specific rules and that there wouldn't be all these financial crises, and not to facilitate more, I guess, debasement of currency and theft of value from people to banks. So that was what was linked there. But there's actually a few other things on this news article that you might notice here. So I actually have it here on a PowerPoint. It's part of the course we have on Bitcoin. So I pulled these few PowerPoints from the course we have. So in the Genesis block, you have this article, right? This news article that came out that everybody talks about. Everybody knows about this article because if you study Bitcoin, you study the Genesis block, you study Satoshi, and you try and figure out what did he mean when he referenced this news article. So obviously what he meant is that, look, governments are bailing out banks yet again, and this devalues our money. And that's why Bitcoin was created. It's a currency that cannot be debased. The government cannot create, the state cannot create more units of this to give to banks or anybody else. But when you look closely, well, here's the Gaza reference. It's actually bigger. There's a few things. Let's go slowly here. And the person who actually showed me these references, because I never noticed this, was Elias, my co-instructor in this course. And even though everybody talks about this, it seems that nobody really dug deep into, I guess, this news article. So if you take a look at this, well, on the front page, we have debasement. We have, well, first of all, the bank bailouts, which is here, which is clear. But there's other things. Down here, you see that the price of a pint of beer in the UK was 99 cents, 99 pences in the UK. Now it's £4 and 21 pence at the time of recording this. So inflation caused the price of a pint of beer to go up by over 400% since 2009, which again is debasement. There's also the reference here that working moms. So that's how she does it. This reference also has to do with debasement because prior to coming off the gold standard, prior to using completely unbacked money, which again, we came off the gold standard in 1971, which is 53 years ago. Prior to that, not both parents needed to work. Only one member of the family needed to work. And with the money that one individual made, that was enough to take care of a whole family, raise multiple children. But nowadays, when this article was written, 2009, that was not the case anymore. It is no more a choice that one member could work in the family. Both members of the family need to work. And again, it's not to say that only one person, which person needs to work. It's just stating that prior to fiat money, one member of the family needed to work, and now two need to work full time, and that's barely enough to get by. Maybe both members should work, but only 20 hours a week each. But now two members work full time, and that's barely enough. Again, cause of debasement. And then the last one is this one here, which is the reference to Gaza. And in this news paper here, this news article, in big, it says Israel prepared to send tanks and troops into Gaza. And this is a reference to eternal wars. Eternal wars are only, able to persist because of fiat currency, because the state is able to print money to fund these wars. Eternal wars cannot work with sound money or money that the state cannot create out of thin air. Now, did Satoshi choose this news article on purpose? Because it had all these references to things that can only happen because of paper money, because of fiat money, because what he's proposing is money that is outside the control of the state. So did he choose an article that had the most references to all these things, or is it by chance? Because at the time, all news articles every day were talking about the bailouts. So he could have chose any other article, any other newspaper, but he chose this one. And again, you might say, well, you're reading too much into this. Well, yes, everybody reads too much in the words and the actions of Satoshi. There's actually a book here called The Book of Satoshi. I actually already purchased this a few months ago, where it's just writings of Satoshi, things he used to say in different blog posts, in emails, things that came out, because nobody knows who Satoshi is. He just created this amazing thing, something, and there's something prophetic, I guess, in it, or religious, where, he came in, solved something that was unsolvable. The white paper solved an issue that mathematically was thought to be unsolvable. Solved it, disappeared, and there's no trace of him. And the only, things we have of him is emails, blog posts, interactions that he had, true emails with other people that are coming out, and people look into them and try and analyze everything and see what he meant through these things. So obviously, when you're looking at this, you ask, well, was this on purpose or was this not on purpose? Now, regardless of if it is on purpose or if it's not on purpose, let me see. Where should I be looking at the camera here? Just want to make sure I'm recording. Yes, I am. If it is on purpose or if it isn't on purpose, it doesn't really matter because Bitcoin solves forever wars. And we cannot have any type of forever wars without fiat currency. And this is because of the industrial military complex. Now, I'm just a guy on the internet, so let's actually listen to somebody else, a politician, talking about the fact that we would not have wars. All the wars we've had and the length of the wars that we've had, if we had money outside of the control of the state. So let's listen to RFK talking about this.
The importance of having decentralized currencies that can reinvigorate our country, that can make our country once again a hub for innovation, for entrepreneurship, that can re-democratize our economy by making our economy more transparent, and giving individuals power to hold on to their wealth without dilution, power to transport the wealth across borders without the government confiscating it from you. All of these, and also the importance in having some kind of root in a base currency that will keep us out of war. I mean, I would say in the last 100 years, there's probably only one war that the American people would have agreed to finance, and that would be World War II. All of these other wars would not have happened if we had base currency. They were all enabled by fiat currency, by the capacity of politicians to print money, because otherwise they'd have to come to us in advance and say, we want a war. This means you're going to have to give up your boarding schools for your kids. You're going to have to give up your boat. You're going to have to buy different kinds of food. You're going to have to downgrade your expectations for your economic expectations for the next 20 years to pay for it. And people would think about it, and they wouldn't do it. And the fact that politicians don't have to do that, they can just print money afterwards without asking anybody's permission, is the reason that we have wars and the reason that we're addicted to wars in this country. So all of the things that a decentralized base currency could do for our country in terms of allowing us to live up to our promise as a country, allowing us to operate efficiently, allowing people to hold on to their wealth that they've made with their hard work, with their minds and their energy. All of that, the more and more Americans who understand that is the promise of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, the better it is.
So here you have RFK talking about how if we had, a money that's like Bitcoin that the government cannot create more of out of thin air, that we would have likely just had one war that would have went to, which is World War II. So every single war since World War I has been funded by debasement. The Federal Reserve was created in 1913. World War I was in 1914, a year after. That war and every single war since then was funded through debasement. What that means is the state, the government that you're living in, didn't come and tax you to go to this war. They didn't sell a wartime bond like they did before. All they had to do was print money, debasing the money you have in your pocket. So it's an implicit tax. It's a tax that isn't that you don't see, and use that money to fund the war. So unlike before central banking, where governments needed the support of the people for a specific war because they needed to tax them directly or sell them a wartime bond or go to a war that's economically viable. That's why we had this long period of colonialism where countries would go to war when they knew it was economically viable. They would extract wealth from a country, spices, gold, something. But you wouldn't go to war if it wasn't economically viable. You wouldn't go to war to spread democracy, for example. But ever since central banking, the industrial military complex captured, I guess, policy in a way. And they captured policy in a way that we will always have wars nonstop as long as we have money that the government can print. So to explain this, this is really the industrial military complex. It's something that's known for a very long time. There's documentaries on it all over the place. But it's basically where the state can print money and give contracts to different industries. Now, the industry that the state wants to give contracts to the most is the defense industry. Why? Because the state doesn't want to print money and give it to other types of companies that compete in the private sector. For example, they don't want to print money and just give it to tech companies because then they're going to interfere with the free market. But they can print as much money and give it to defense contractor because this is one of the sectors where they can print as much as they want and send it that way, and they're not interfering too much in, in the free market. So it creates this, Antopoulos says this in a really nice way. He says, Antonopoulos, he says it creates this parasitic, industries. And these industries, what they want, because they know that they can get contracts from the state, from the government, with a lot of money, they start lobbying the state. And they start, this is the industrial military complex. These companies, they give money to politicians on every side, left, right, all the politicians. And in return, the politicians who are in power give them contracts. And the industrial military complex keeps growing. Last year, 2023, they were 13% of the US budget, which out of over 6 trillion, that's over 650 million was given to the defense sector. So there is this institution that profits from wars, that wants wars. So when you think about it, who wants wars? Well, defense contractors, Lockheed Martin, all these big firms that if you look at the return of these firms consistently outperforming the S&P 500, they're getting so much money from the state to produce these armaments, and their interests, what they would want is for us to have the most amount of wars for the longest period of time. And when they get these contracts and they get this money, they send it back to politicians and they lobbying meaning bribing, because, why would you give money to somebody if you're not getting something in return? They lobby all the politicians. So the politicians as well who want more money have an interest to give more money to defense contractor. And it creates this loop. And this loop is a little bit out of control. So when you think about it, who has interest for war is defense contractors and politicians who get lobbied by defense contractors. These are the only people. Nobody else benefits from war. I don't, you don't, nobody does. So nobody wants a forever war. Nobody wants war in general, because when there's war, our money gets debased. The state prints money, debasing the value of the money we have. That's why we have inflation. Things are more expensive. So we pay for it through debasement. We don't see it, it's implicit. If it wasn't implicit, if it was direct taxation, we had money that the state couldn't print, the state would have to tax it directly. Imagine taxing somebody in the United States, for example, to go to Ukraine, for example, and you go to somebody who's struggling, who has barely enough money to feed their kids, and you knock on their door and you tell them, hey, give us a few $100s. It'll be different. It'll be hard for you to get that money. But today, because you don't need to ask permission, you can just print this money. You can just print an infinite amount and give an infinite amount, even if that money is not yours. It's the people's money, right? The value comes from people using it. So when you really think about it, for all other people, there is no actual interest for war. To the opposite, most people want productivity gains, and war does not help productivity gains. Those resources are, when your money is debased to go to war, that money, you could have used it for something else. There's this misconception that a lot of people have that war is good for the economy, because when there is war, even though you do see, I guess, a little boost in the economy in the short run, it's taken from other places. There's a really good example that the Austrian Economic School of Thought talks about. You can find this on Mises Institute, where they tell you, imagine you have like a store and somebody comes and breaks your window. You might have to spend $300 to hire somebody to fix the window. Is that going to be good for the economy? Sure, because that person the person who fixed your window is going to get a job, and he might use that money to spend it somewhere else. But you're not taking into account that the $300 you spent to fix that window, you would have used at another time to do something else with it in the future that you now cannot do. So when the state prints money for war efforts, that debases the money of everybody else that would have used that money, that value in another way for something else that is more, yields to higher production for the whole society. So actually wars are really bad for society. So you really have to look at it this way, where there's only one industry who profits from that. It's the industrial military complex. And you can actually, we're going to listen to Eisenhower, his address to the country. Eisenhower was a US president, and when he was leaving, he wrote this farewell address in 1961. And in this address, he says, "I come to you with a message of leave, taking, and farewell, and to share a few final thoughts with you, my countrymen." And this, we're going to listen to it here. It's about the industrial military complex. He gives a warning about the industrial military complex.
A vital element in keeping the peace is our military establishment. Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action, so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction. Our military organization today bears little relation to that known of any of my predecessors in peacetime, or indeed by the fighting men of World War II or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
So in his farewell address, he clearly says one thing: I want you to watch out for the industrial military complex because they might take the country over. They might control us. And that is what happened. You know, if you look at the comments here, he predicted 80 years of America history in 2 minutes. America made a grave mistake in not taking Eisenhower's final speech as president seriously. He was warning us about what's happening to our country now. You know, and he did, because that's the time where the money printing was starting, and the industrial military complex, an industry that's parasitic like other industries, was growing. And he saw that, hey, this is going to capture policy. It's going to capture politicians. So instead of having this democratic process where you have represented officials that are supposed to represent you, right? You vote for people and they represent you. Well, you don't have that anymore. You vote for people, but those people aren't representing you. They're representing defense contractors, which lobby them, and, you know, the circle that we just talked about. And he's warning about that. And that is what happened. Ever since then, it's nonstop wars, forever wars, and wars that do not benefit anybody but politicians and defense contractors. Everybody else loses from it. For regular people, you benefit from collaboration. If you want to work and build something, you want to collaborate with people, with your neighbors, with people abroad who are in a global environment. And when you collaborate with somebody, well, you want that person to do great because they're your business partner. If you have a business partner, you want them to do great, you know? And then we have higher productivity, things become cheaper, we have a better life. So now the industrial military complex has completely captured policy. You know, and this has happened before. At one point, cigarettes were considered healthy because, you know, they'd captured policy and they lobbied. Sugar was considered healthy because they captured policy and they were lobbying. Now, the industrial military complex is at a completely different level. And it works in a lot of ways because even though the interest is just for defense contractors and politicians, they obviously want to get people on board and they want people to support these wars. And that's why whenever you look at historical wars, at the time, the media always convinces people that this war is good and we want to support it. If you take a look at, for example, the Iraq War was, everybody was supporting it at the time. But you take a look at it now and the support isn't the same. Because at the time, people were told there's weapons of mass destructions. People who committed the 9/11 attacks were in Iraq. But turns out both of these things were not true. So not only did hundreds of thousands of people die, also Americans died, but then everybody else, us, we lost purchasing power and value from our money. We paid for it, and we lost productive capacity by the opportunity cost of the money that could have been deployed elsewhere than to wars. Now here comes Bitcoin. By using Bitcoin, we can eliminate the leeching of this money, like Antonopoulos says, from these parasitic industries. Because the state cannot print money anymore, cannot create money out of thin air. These industries that leech off of that do not have this way to feed off of it anymore. And these parasitic industries become smaller. Like there's still going to be a military industrial complex, but it's going to be smaller. Because now if the state wants to go to war, it would only be able to do that through direct taxation. And this industry that is continuously pushing for war, for forever wars, because that's how that industry makes money, will not work anymore. And since for most people, for you, for me, for anybody else, we want the least amount of wars, we would support money that the state cannot create more of. And that's where Bitcoin comes in. This is one of the reasons a lot of people like Bitcoin, because it removes money from the state. So first of all, it's voluntary and peaceful. Adopting Bitcoin is just opting out of the current system. Being part of the system when you own fiat money, dollars, when the state prints money and centrally directs it for war efforts or for something else, you are in fact paying for that through the debasement or the loss of value in your money, and this newly printed money acquiring that value, you pay for it. But if you don't have any of that money, this payment or this burden is left on other people who are holding that money. And as less and less people want their money debased and start opting out of the system and holding Bitcoin, the burden is left on fewer and fewer people, which ends up pushing them to also adopt Bitcoin. So adopting Bitcoin, holding Bitcoin as a savings tool instead of holding fiat, you are not paying for anything that the state is paying for through debasement. And this is why you have a lot of people who post this meme where, if only we had Bitcoin, if we're using Bitcoin, this is what society would look like. Now, they say that for a bunch of reasons. Some people say that because of the elimination of the nonstop wars we have. Some people post this because they understand economics and they see that when the state takes resources from the private sector to centrally plan and allocate, it is not a free economy. Other people want to adopt Bitcoin because it's freedom, where they own the fruits of their labors, and they feel that unless you own the fruits of your labors, you're not really free, and it's a freedom tool. Now, there's a lot of other reasons why people like Bitcoin, and I don't want to make this video too long. I'm already dragging here, but this is how Bitcoin solves forever wars, by dismantling the flow of money that the industrial military complex feeds on. And this was the case historically when we had for example, gold, where it was different. Now, gold isn't as great as Bitcoin, even though gold right now has a market cap of over 10 times what Bitcoin has. And just a note on that, 15 years that we've had Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is already close to silver. It's the 9th largest asset in the world, which a lot of people view Bitcoin as a absolutely legitimate financial asset, and it's going in the right direction here. So Bitcoin compared to gold is a little bit different, because historically we used gold for over 2,500 years. But gold was captured by the state. The state at one point, Executive Order 6102 by Franklin D. Roosevelt, captured gold. It required citizens to surrender their gold and use paper money instead that was backed up by gold. But then they, rugged the people by removing the gold standard and saying, finally, no, money isn't backed up by gold. You got to use our money. That's in 1971 by President Nixon, where he closed the gold window. But gold was taken. And this is why a lot of people thought, we can never take money out of the state's hands. Because before we did have our own money, we used gold for over 2,500 years. We used silver. We used a bunch of different forms of money. But the state captured money by force, right? You would go to jail if you didn't give your gold to the Federal Reserve. And the fine was $10,000, which is over $235,000 in today's money, plus potential imprisonments. But you can't do that. You cannot force people to give you their Bitcoins, because Bitcoin is a digital money. It's easy to hide. It's obfuscable. You go to somebody's home, you can find their Bitcoin. Try to take some, you can find their gold, right? It's a physical item. But Bitcoin is different. Try to travel with some gold and see how that goes. But try to travel with Bitcoin. It's just words in your brain. You can have a code. You don't need to store it in the location where you are. There is a bunch of ways to obfuscate it. It's basically unseizable in a way, or the cost to seize it is so high. And you can really view it as I guess, a boat. If there's a dock that tries to charge a specific tax, you can just take the boat and float, which you can't do with gold. You cannot do with real estate. You cannot do with stocks. It's really the first currency that you truly own, that's truly private property. So I rambled on here in this video because I have no notes and I was just decided to make a video here. And I just took a few of these PowerPoints from the course we have on Bitcoin. Let me pull it up. So I just pulled up, 7 slides from our Bitcoin course. We have a 16-hour, let me plug it in, 16-hour Bitcoin course. It's over 250 slides. There's a link to take the full course for about $13. It's the lowest price Udemy allows. But I took these slides out of it just to discuss one aspect of Bitcoin. But there's so many facets that you can look at Bitcoin where Bitcoin solves things. One of them is forever wars, which we discussed right now. So I rambled on enough. The next video I'm going to try to stay on subject and make it more concise. But let's leave this with a little video from Friedrich Hayek. Here we go.
And what we have had since in development were matters of government inventions, mostly wrong, mostly abuses of money. And I have come to the position of asking, has monetary policy ever done any good? I don't think it has. I think it has done only harm. And that's why I'm now pleading for what I've called denationalization of money.
I think that money has only done harm, and I'm pleading for denationalization of money. By Friedrich Hayek. Okay, it's not nobody.
Believes that we shall ever have a good money again before we take the thing out of the hands of government.
We will never have good money again unless we take it out of the hands of the government.
We can't take them violently out of the hands of government. All we can do is, by some sly roundabout way, introduce something they can't stop.
The only way we can do that is by some sly or roundabout way, introduce something they can't stop. And that is Bitcoin. It's something that no state can stop. And we finally have it. It's not here tomorrow. It's not here in a year. We have it today. So will Bitcoin become the next form of money we use because it solves all these issues that so many people care about? In this video, we just discussed one of them, but I encourage you to study Bitcoin and study all the things that it can improve on, and study the history of money and how a money that the state doesn't control offers so many benefits to society. Now, is Bitcoin going to be money? Who knows? We don't know the future. But if it was going to be money, it is going in that trajectory. Bitcoin has been here for 15 years, and it has consistently grown each year in terms of network effect, in terms of hash power, in terms of security, in terms of adoption. So if there is a future where it became money, it would look something like it has been looking like up until now. And, a lot of times we just can't imagine that something like this happened. Like, what are the odds that this actually happens? But there's so many things that happen that you think we're in a simulation. Like, Trump got shot in the ear a week ago. Like, who thought that would happen? So, it's not really that crazy to think that Bitcoin might become money. And there's a lot of reasons to think that there is a probability for that to happen. So anyways, I rambled on enough. Thank you for watching this video. I'm going to see you in another one that's going to be shorter, more concise. I promise. Take care, guys. Bye.